Archives of Prasar Bharati presents the timeless treasure of golden era.
The state of Karnataka lies on the western coast of India. This is where the Arabian Sea washes the silver shores adorned with lush green coconut trees. The landscape is beautiful, tranquil backwaters gently stretching out to meet the thickly forested hills sloping down from the western Ghats. This is the home of the Koraga tribe. Although the tribal population in Karnataka is about 19 lakhs, of this the Koraga form a microscopic minority. The cluster of huts where the Koraga dwell is called a kopu. A single residential unit, a small low hut with a thatched roof, is called as kotta. In days gone by, the Koraga houses, modest shelters to be precise, were constructed with areca nut leaves, supported by bamboo sticks. These, in course of time, made way for huts with clay walls, barely able to stand the fury of the monsoon. One can still see a house of this type in a Koraga cluster some distance away from a town. The numbers of the Koragas are minuscule. According to 2001 census, the Koraga population is not more than 30,000. The Koraga are easy to identify due to their distinctive physical characteristics. Most of them make do with minimal clothing and a unique hat made by stitching a dried areca nut leaf. Ornaments are minimal, beads are popular with both sexes. The Koraga tribe is divided into three branches. These are the Unti Koragas, who are also called the Tippi Koragas, the Sappu Koragas, and the Kapadda Koragas. These three branches are further subdivided into more than a dozen clans. Chaulkere is a tranquil pond that the Koragas maintain. It was excavated by one of their ancient kings, Nandarai. Those belonging to other communities share this belief, as they refer to this pond that never dries as one built by a low-born king. Barkur in the ages gone by was ruled by Jain kings and abounds with historic ruins of temples and old buildings. The history of the Koraga tribe is covered in a thick mist of myth and folklore that makes it extremely difficult to separate fact from fantasy. They claim that they are the original inhabitants who were defeated and then driven into the forest by invaders from the north. It is believed that the inscription on the granite stone slab placed outside the beautiful Ganpati temple at Barkur chronicles the valorous deeds of the Koraga rulers of yore. Written in Old Kannada, this inscription has proved difficult to decipher, and the distant past remains obscure and shrouded in mystery. Koraga tradition maintains that Hubashika, one of their ancestors, was a very brave warrior who had even subdued Mayur Varma, a famous Kadamba ruler. Not very far off at Mekikattu, one comes across a fascinating collection of colorful Bhoot icons wrought in wood. These are worshipped by the Koraga and others. These statues, we are told, were gifted by a grateful king who was saved from marauding invaders by the deity in this temple. The Koraga could not enter the temple, but were assigned the duty of playing the drums on festive occasions, sitting some distance away from the holy precincts. It was the same duty they had to perform at other temples on other ceremonial occasions. Other scheduled tribes and backward castes celebrate traditional festivals in a colorful manner. But the Koraga existence stands out in stark contrast without any trace of color. Only recently have the young Koragas started joyous celebrations. In the past, Koragas were scattered and not allowed to settle down or stay together. Then how could the community celebrate festivals of their own, or sing, or dance together?
We are not allowed to perform our own festival. We were only slaves. We were only to beat drums for the sake of others, for the enjoyment of general public. We were made to beat drums at a distance.
The entire community was branded as Ashubh, inauspicious. It is not surprising that repeatedly humiliated and insulted, oppressed and exploited, the Koraga retired into a shell and shunned contact with the non-Koraga. They talked to each other in their own dialect. This further inhibited their progress. They retreated into the forest and retained primitive superstitions. The Koraga barely eked out an existence by weaving baskets and rolling ropes. It has always been hard to collect the required raw materials. They have had to beg the landlords for permission to climb the trees owned by them or gather it from forests under their control. Drying the branches, cutting strips out of these of required size and shape, and finally weaving them into different shapes is a time-consuming process. Very few are aware of the skill and the hard work this entails. Most of the Koraga are basket weavers. This is the main occupation in 90% of the Koraga households. Raw material for basket weaving and rope making is increasingly difficult to get. What in the past could be obtained relatively easily from the forest can no longer be collected without hindrance and harassment. Poor illiterate Koraga often fall prey to the exploiting landlords who own the coconut trees or are preyed upon by forest officials. To make matters worse, there is very little demand for the traditional produce of this kind in the marketplaces. Rolling rope from coconut coir is extremely arduous. First, the straw is obtained by crushing and squeezing dry shell, and then the dried strings of coir are laboriously rolled with palms on flat ground to make small strings that have to be painstakingly entwined to produce a strong rope. Other traditional occupation is cashew nut plucking. Work on plantations is seasonal. Stone cutting is restricted to a few families settled in the proximity of the stone quarries. The labor in stone quarries is back-breaking. Not many malnourished Koraga can endure it. While the payment is better, most of the income continues to be squandered away by the spendthrift tribal. Many illiterate and impoverished Koraga are employed in the cities and towns as sweepers and scavengers and continue to perform degrading and repulsive tasks. The fishing harbor at Malpe generates a lot of waste. Birds hovering in the sky can dispose of only a small amount of this garbage. The rest of it is left to be taken care of by the Koraga. The Koraga try to maintain body and soul together by whatever is available. Everyday fare is simple. A little boiled rice is consumed with gratitude. It is spiced up with upi minchi, a paste of salt, tamarind, and red chilies. In the lean season, even this Spartan staple diet becomes difficult to secure. Some Koraga supplement their diet with tortillas. It is also the practice of the Koraga to dry animal skins and meat in the sun to use these items when food is scarce. This has only served to perpetuate their reputation as carrion eaters. There were very few occasions in the life of a Koraga to celebrate. Birth, puberty rites, marriage punctuated an individual's passage through time. The newborn in the past was named on the 8th day according to the day of the week he was born in. Marriages are solemnized simply. A feast puts the seal of approval on the relationship. However, in the olden days, it was customary to pay a small bride price to the bride's mother prior to marriage. Kaivattan marks the onset of puberty. The family and friends are treated to a simple but sumptuous feast. There is hardly any ritual and only a ceremonial feast brings the community together. The life's journey of a Koraga is over with as little fuss as its beginning. The dead body is disposed of with a simple burial in a quiet cemetery. Only a few stones placed over the grave mark it and protect it from prowling scavengers. Rarely was a Koraga cremated. Things are changing today. This practice is spreading. Be it a burial or a cremation, a fistful of food and a glassful of drink is usually left behind at the site of the funeral to provide for the departed soul. The Koraga places of worship are appropriately called Bhutasthan. The religion is uncomplicated by elaborate ritual and is limited to propitiating spirits that dwell in the forests. Slabs of stone represent the seat of a spirit. These are placed under the shade of a tree, although some are nowadays covered by a small canopy. The objects of worship are few: a vessel for water, a lamp, and maybe some incense sticks. It is ironical that those responsible for the persecution of the Koraga themselves dreaded the occult powers of the Koraga. The power of the evil spirits was maliciously transferred to the Koraga and the tribe was stigmatized further. It was common belief that the Koraga could ward off illness or misfortune by taking the blight upon themselves. They were forced to eat food contaminated with the nails and hairs of a sick person to cure him. In theory, the Koraga society is matriarchal, and indeed the system of succession, Aliya Santana, follows through the sisters' children. Ironically, in practice, things are very different. It is the males who wield real power and decide how the household income is disposed of. Koraga women bear the main burden of running the household. They have to often walk long distances to fetch drinking water and to collect the fuel to cook the meals with. It is they who have to sweep the floor, keep the house clean, and look after the children. Women remain the most vulnerable section of the community, constantly exposed to physical abuse and mental stress. Cases of tuberculosis are on a rise and often go untreated. Only the fortunate few secure admission in government hospitals. Alcoholism and malnutrition continue to plague the Koraga. Despair and desperation aggravate their economic plight. Only recently has the process of organizing for self-help begun among the Koraga tribal community. Koraga Mahila Bahuddeshiya Sehkari Sangh is a cooperative society that has pioneered the change. It has successfully encouraged its members to take up new income-generating activities. It takes an entire morning to make a couple of jasmine garlands, and two women working in tandem can hope to make on an average not more than ₹50 per day. Koraga Mahila Bahuddeshiya Sehkari Sangh Niyamita strives to encourage the tribal women to adopt a progressive mindset and not to be fettered by traditional servitude. The administration has worked hard to connect the far-flung cluster of Koraga houses with roads and supply most of them with electricity and drinking water. Till a few years back, the Koraga could not think beyond owning a cycle. Today, thanks to bank loans and the government-sponsored schemes for urban unemployed, a handful of Koraga tribal youth own three-wheelers. However, these are exceptions, not the rule. It is not as if none of the Koraga has benefited from the schemes of the government. One Koraga has shown great entrepreneurship by opening up a provisional store. The other is self-employed as an operator of an STD booth. The government of India since independence has spent vast sums of money on tribal uplift, but unfortunately, development seems to have bypassed the Koraga. Mohan Kumar, an engineer from this community, is one of the very few rare success stories. He is concerned about the hardships and the hurdles that continue to bar the way ahead.
The beginning English was I was facing some this one language problem in English especially, and even in this one that technical terms and all we actually were entirely new to it. We can educate our parents to focus their children towards education, this one, and there are some more than 60 to 70% children will be dropped after their 7th class. So for them, I think the now present government programs for training is not enough.
Literacy is extremely limited among the Koragas. Only a few of them manage to complete their schooling. In In recent years, the Sanghas or village level associations inspired by the Samagra Gramin Ashram, an NGO active in the field of tribal welfare, have played a significant role in the mobilization of the Koraga. At these non-formal educational institutions, the Koraga children and young adults are taught new skills. They not only learn a new language, but are also exposed to new ideas. They are also discovering the joys of working on the land and making it green. They are being trained to make the transition from food gathering to food growing. The Koraga have for years remained alienated from land. They are no longer prepared to remain so. The stirrings of unrest and discontent erupted in the land movement at Kalatur a few years back. Gauri, who participated in it and was put in jail for a month and a half with her young daughter, recollects what the agitation taught her.
ಹೌದು, ನಾವೀಗ ಭೂಮಿ ಚಳುವಳಿ ಮಾಡುವಾಗಲೇ ನಮಗೆ ಈ ರೀತಿ ಆಗ್ತದೆ ಅಂತ ಎನ್ನುವಂಥದ್ದು ಒಂದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಆಲೋಚನೆಗಳು ಇತ್ತು. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಅಷ್ಟು ಹೆದರಿಕೆ ಎನ್ನುವಂಥದ್ದು ಇಲ್ಲ. ಅಂದರೆ ಆ ಸ್ಪಿರಿಟ್ ನಮಗೆ ಭೂಮಿ ಸಿಗಬೇಕು ಎನ್ನುವಂಥ ಒಂದು ಛಲ ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದ ಕಾರಣ ನನಗೆ ಆ ರೀತಿಯ ಒಂದು ಹೆದರಿಕೆ ಎನ್ನುವಂಥದ್ದು ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ.
Many young women in the past decade have enthusiastically joined the Sanghas and are no longer prepared to bear insults or accept a stigmatized social status. They have gladly assumed a new role as self-reliant agents of change. The Koraga cannot hope to survive as outcasts and vagrants or squatters on forest lands, those who can be ousted at will.
Unless they are provided land, unless they are made to be cultivators, unless they are educated to be self-reliant, unless they are allowed to organize themselves, unless they are made to realize their own capacity, all the projects will vanish.
Only when land is given to them can the Koraga become economically independent, freed from bondage, and regain their dignity. What does the future hold in store for the Koraga? The old may be apprehensive, but the young do not lack the confidence. The young are proud of their heritage. They retain a strong sense of community. The drummers today play not unwillingly at someone else's command, but at will and for their own joy. These are the drum beats of liberation.